inspiration. You took my heart, all my keys, and my patience. You took my heart, I must leave a decoration. You mistaken my love, I brought for you for foundation. All that I wanted from you was to give me something that I never had, something that you never seen, something that you never been. But I wake up and hell nothing's wrong. Just get ready for work, 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 work.
KBLA Talk 1580. That's my theme song. That's my walk-on music. Well, we're talking about work today in the state of California. And if you're not in the state of California, you should listen anyway, because this can be your hashtag goals. I'm not trolling. Okay, I am. Welcoming into the studio this morning, a couple of special guests. The first guest was born and raised in East LA and appointed by Governor Gavin Newsom as the California State Labor Commissioner back in 2019. She oversees primary law enforcement, the law enforcement agency for workplace protections, even though you might not think of it that way. They've got 20 offices all over California and 500 public servants who work under them to investigate and adjudicate all kinds of workplace violations, from unpaid wages to retaliation. Commissioner Lilia Garcia Brower, welcome back.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you in. And of course, formerly with the LA Black Workers Center, a labor organizer and activist, Sherri Bell is joining us.
Hello, good morning. How y'all doing this morning?
Sherri,
good morning.
Surprise.
Surprise.
It's great to have you guys in. Very, very great. And we do want to start with some basic stuff. Some of us don't even know there's a labor commissioner, that's a thing that the state of California, and we talked about that this last time you were in, Commissioner, that we actually have more protections than workers in a lot of other places.
That's absolutely right, Dominique. We have all of our offices as far north as Redding, California, far south as San Diego, to the east in El Centro, that have professionals full-time who are there to take claims, investigate claims, and educate the public. We also have a helpline that individuals could call and ask questions, 833-526-4636, Monday through Friday, 9 to 4:30. So please do call us with your questions. We are responsible for educating the public about their protections, explaining the process if they in fact do experience wage theft or retaliation, and also investigating and adjudicating those cases. Miss Sherri Bell is one of our deputy labor commissioners in our retaliation unit. So we have several different departments within our agency, but I think what's most important is the wage claim adjudication, where individuals, that looks more like small claims court. It's a public process where a worker names their employer and they come in before a conference deputy and a hearing officer. And then we have our retaliation unit, which Sherri is in, which takes retaliation complaints and investigates those and moves to resolve and make determinations on those cases.
And these kinds of questions, cases, they're generally, as we talked about last time, they're generally not going to be with unionized labor. It's more generally going to be anyone in any other job within the state, right?
Yeah, that's correct. But we do take people who are part of unions. We just we would like to, in the wage process, if they're filing a wage claim, they should bring their collective bargaining agreement, because sometimes we are not preempted from looking at certain issues, right?
We're not going to interpret a contract.
Right.
But we have to make sure the employer's providing minimal standards. So no union contract could excuse an employer from basic protections, like the overtime, the meal and rest breaks. Safety issues, exactly.
So what are some of the kinds of questions someone might call that hotline, the 833-526-4636? What kind of things can we call and ask about?
Well, they'll ask about their minimum wage. If there's a local minimum wage and a state minimum wage, sometimes workers are confused, and we will explain to them that we will enforce the highest wage that applies to them. They will also ask about paid sick days. We know that in California, beginning January of this year, all workers have the right to 40 hours of paid sick day or 5 paid sick days a year. And so there's some requirements to that. So we'll go over that information with them. They'll also want to know how it is that if they in fact have not been paid properly, like the overtime hours. So what is that process? So we'll explain the wage claim process. Or if they were defending themselves at work, for example, saying, hey, I didn't get my overtime, and then they got fired, then they got cut from the schedule, what could they do then? And so they call us with those types of questions.
And speaking of retaliation, I mean, we've seen a lot of that, obviously not just in California, but nationwide. I know the feds came down on Starbucks for retaliating against workers because they were trying to unionize. And I don't know that they've gotten admonished for it, but I know that Amazon has been accused of the same thing.
Yeah.
So why is that illegal? And if we think it's happening to us, what do we do?
Well, see, the thing is, if you're trying to unionize and you get retaliated based on that you have to file a complaint with the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB. However, if you feel like you've been retaliated against from like speaking up about unsafe working conditions or your pay or anything like that under the over 40 labor codes that we enforce, you can file a claim with the Labor Commissioner's office. So if you're unsure, you can call the public information line and tell us the situation. And if we can't assist you based on what we're hearing, we will direct you where to file, or if we'll encourage you to file anyway and just have us look into it and see, what we could, how we can assist.
Okay, so one is on the federal level for certain, like labor retaliation,
right.
Labor organizing retaliation, and the other is for anybody in the state of California who feels that they've been discriminated or retaliated against for any reason. They at least just call you guys and find out whether it is the kind of thing that you could help with.
Absolutely. And let me just be clear that the retaliation under state law that we enforce is when workers are exercising rights provided to them by law. So there's a lot of confusion where workers feel the supervisor doesn't like me, the supervisor's favoring this person, and that's why my hours were cut, or they feel that's why we're being mistreated, right? They call that retaliation, where that, unfortunately, that's unjust and unfair, but doesn't fit within the parameters of the law.
So in other words, your boss has a right to not like you and give love to somebody else. They don't have a right to retaliate or discriminate.
Exactly. And that's one of the things we really want to amplify, right? That bosses have rights. They have constitutional rights, right? To organize their business and operate it.
They have a right to be evil. No, I'm just kidding. Hey, I'm a small business owner. I guess I could be somebody's boss one day. But the point is, you're saying even in certain situations, do business owners come to the Labor Commission for help as well?
We do have a business engagement program because we have a duty to the good employer, the employer who's trying to follow the law and who's being undercut, right? So we have a business engagement program where we train thousands of employers every year. And we want to support them to answer their questions and make sure they understand what their obligations are.
Yeah, lots to talk about here. I think to your point, there is a lot of confusion. Even just having this conversation, there's a couple things I would like to clear up about sick leave, for example, and a few other things. If you got a question, this is a great panel to be able to call into as an employer, employee, or a person on a mission to start a business. 800-920-1580. 800-920-1580. I'm Dominique DiPrima for Unapologetically Progressive, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power. KBLA Talk 1580 is the fastest growing talk radio station in Southern California. Home to 50,000 watts and an audience reach of 12 million listeners. KBLA Talk 1580 is a pioneer for Black audio content. including our groundbreaking $2 million climate justice campaign and the most loyal, influential audience. According to an independent research study by the polling firm Aviterus, for the second consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the most trustworthy, reliable, and credible news source for Black audiences and beyond in Southern California. Let KBLA Talk 1580 power your advertising dollars. Our omni-channel custom marketing solutions are specifically tailored to connect with your ideal target audience. We leverage audio, podcasts, streaming, digital, social media, and local activations to get your message out to the Black community. Get in touch with our advertising team today at advertising@KBLA1580.com. That's advertising at KBLA1580.com. KBLA 1580. We've got you, Black.
Salutations, kinfolk and family. It's Slink Johnson. Los Angeles is known for some of the greatest tacos in the world, but none better than the Original Taco Pete. Visit them online at originaltacopete.com or check them out at 3272 Slauson Avenue near the corner of Slauson and Crenshaw, or 2251 Rosecrans Avenue, or you can always have Grubhub, DoorDash, or Uber Eats delivered. Original Taco Pete, home of the Black Taco. Black owned for over 35 years and 4 generations.
So you just used bug spray in your home. Now what? Well, between the waiting and waiting for things to dry up and keeping your family away from the mess, it hits you. You could have used Zevo. Unlike other bug sprays that stick around, Zevo goes from kill to clean in seconds. Plus, it's safe for use around people and pets when used as directed. Zevo, people-friendly, bug-deadly.
Some days I cover up because of my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. Now I'm hitting the road with clearer skin thanks to Skyrizi, Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. With Skyrizi, 3 out of 4 people achieved 90% clearer skin at 4 months. And Skyrizi is just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Ask your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist prescribed biologic in psoriasis, and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKY-RIZZI to learn more.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
And today we are waking up with California Labor Commissioner Lilia Garcia Brower and Sherri Bell, who actually works with her, but is also a familiar voice around here. Now, we're kind of starting with the basics, but you said something during News, Traffic, and Sports, Commissioner, that is interesting to me, because I think on the one end, people don't know our rights, and we put up with a whole bunch of stuff that we maybe shouldn't. On the other end of the spectrum, we think we know our rights, and then we can, quit or throw our weight around and find out we are not on solid footing. And that's more common than I thought, apparently.
Absolutely. So it's really important for workers to understand, if you are to be protected by retaliation laws in California, that means that you've exercised a right and that your employer had knowledge. And it's because you exercised your right, that's why they terminated you, or they cut your hours, or they're creating some negative environment for you at work. They're giving you more work. So for example, if you didn't get paid overtime, and then you went to the supervisor and you told him, hey, I was short 5 hours on my last paycheck. And then in the next paycheck, in the next schedule, all of a sudden you're down 4 hours, right? And it keeps decreasing. Then that's retaliatory, because you told your employer that you were short hours, and then they took actions against you because you were exercising your rights. Now, part of the trick is the employer has a lot of rights to organize their business and establish rules about their business. So if the employer says Monday is purple shirt day, and you need to show up with a purple shirt on Monday, And then the week after you complained about your overtime, you don't show up with your purple shirt. And for that reason, your employer lets you go. Then you're falling into a justifiable reason.
Right, they're covered.
Yes.
So how important is it to document everything? Like, okay, on this day I complained about, toxic mold, and on the following day my hours were cut. Like, to take notes and keep memos.
Documentation is the most important thing. It's important to know exactly who you're working for, to have addresses of the workplaces that you go to, have the names of the supervisors, the HR people that you talk to. Communicate with your colleagues. Be seen. If you're a security officer, the only person for that company at a remote location, greet the gardeners who come, greet the people at the entry, greet the office people so that they can be a witness to you, because you also need to document all your hours. But if the employer has information to challenge that documentation, you also need witnesses to come in and support and say, yes, we saw him show up every day to report to his shift.
Back to Purple Shirt Day for a second. It means that if you're going to speak out at work about anything, even your own hours and schedule, you really need to know what the rules are at your job in detail, right?
Yes, and you should ask for an employee manual. The prudent employer has an employer manual written in black and white of how they're running their operation. How are they keeping time cards? What's the schedule of their payroll? Who do you go to if you have a problem? What happens if you're hurt at work, right? What happens if you feel unsafe by a colleague or a member of the public or anybody? An employer should tell you what that process is.
And we have to take that stuff seriously. I mean, I've looked at some of those handbooks. I'm like, okay, if you say so. But I guess if you are a squeaky wheel, suddenly those things are going to be enforced, even if they've never been enforced before. And from what you're describing, that's the employer's right.
Absolutely. But they need to be consistent in that enforcement. But if you don't know what the rule is, how can you be vigilant of what your employer's doing?
Right.
That's why we're asking workers to ask for that document. And if the employer doesn't provide it or say they don't have it, write that down, because all of a sudden when you file a claim, there's a document.
Suddenly we do have an employee handbook.
And for you to say, I asked for it and I was told you don't have it.
Right. Okay. So the other thing we were talking about during news, traffic, and sports are some of the more common complaints. And it sounds like the area of security workers, security guards, is an area with some confusion or gray parts of what's acceptable. And of course, there's lots of black folks working in that space. Sherri, what are some of the things, like sort of pitfalls or common issues for security guards?
Yeah, so the overtime, right? So sometimes a security officer will pick up a second shift because they believe that they're going to continue and accumulate overtime hours, and sometimes that's not always the case, and it leads to miscommunication and how could I say, expectations, right? So pretty much like if a shift is straddling like 2 24-hour periods, the employer has to demonstrate why that, if they're not going to pay overtime, right, for those extra hours, they have to demonstrate a business need. You can explain that a little better. But I know that is one. Also, the on-duty meal periods. So a lot of times security officers work alone, and the employer doesn't fully relieve them of all their duties because they're the only people there, and so they should be getting paid for that on-duty meal period. But there's also legal obligations that an employer has to meet for not providing somebody like an uninterrupted meal period. But a lot of times people do work alone, but they should be getting compensated for that 30 minutes that they get. But I would like if you could touch on like the first question that you asked me about the 24-hour shift. This is a common thing. So
absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Sherri. And I think this, Dominique, highlights a real important point for workers to understand, that overtime is evaluated based on two things: 24-hour workday, and 7 days in a week, 7 consecutive work days. And the employer has a right to define when does that 24-hour period begin and when does that 7 work week? When does it start and when does it end? If the employer doesn't define it, then they're going to refer back to how we interpret it. So we interpret the workday at 12:01 a.m. to 12 the next 24 hours.
Right.
And so for a security officer, if you are working at, you start your shift at 8 p.m. and you don't end it until you're into the next 24-hour period, who is the employer responsible to pay you those overtime hours past midnight? And so the reason what we would look at, as Sherri said, we would look at what's the business justification for having a work shift that straddles the 24-hour period. And the employer has to demonstrate that business justification. And if in fact they have it, then they wouldn't have to pay that overtime.
Okay, so if they have a business justification, they could have their clock from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 8 a.m., I guess.
Well,
or
yes.
Instead of midnight to.
No, what I meant was they can establish their own clock, their own
right.
24 hours. But I was just giving an example. What happens when a security officer works over, second
right.
to the next 24-hour period? And generally, the employer would be responsible to pay that overtime unless they can demonstrate a business justification of why they have an officer working, straddling that 24-hour period.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it would be that hard for them to come up with a business justification.
Well, we can't give a clear yes or no on it because we would have to really dive in on what is the reason for it.
Yeah, I think that's just an area where so many of us work and so many people who have trouble, who have had trouble getting other kinds of jobs.
Right.
It seems like that might be a place where people are going to be exploited because they may feel like they can't get another job or they might not know the rights. That's
exactly right. And unfortunately, there's a lot of bad faith supervisors, managers, employers who just tell the officer says, hey, I worked 5 hours last week and you didn't pay me. And they're going to come say, no, you don't have that overtime because it was past midnight. So that counts towards the next day. Right. So that's why it's important for officers to arm themselves with this information so that they would be able to push back. And ultimately, if they feel they're not getting the right side of it, they could file a claim with our office.
Yeah, and we started talking about numbers, so I tuned out a little bit. But like if they're like unclear about that, they can call the public information line and try to get some feedback. And also, people have a 3-year statute of limitations usually to file a claim. So if they feel like it's an issue that they don't feel comfortable in confronting their employer about, you can look for another job and file later. I'm not trying to say that, but you can. But also, if you just feel like this is wrong and you're not getting enough clarity, you can just file the claim and have us look through it. So you could try to get as much information as you can on the front end, but ultimately you have a right to file the claim and have the investigation conducted and go through that process. I thought that this was an important topic because there's a lot of confusion about it, and people do get exploited with this area. And also like uniforms and guard cards, and we have rules and stuff about that as well.
So if they're confused, call 833-526-4636. We just a minute until news, traffic, and sports, but clarify what you mean by uniforms and guard cards, like what the rules are around that.
Yeah, so nowadays, employers are not obligated to provide the payment for the guard cards because it's such a common practice in the industry for them not to, right? And also with the uniforms, if the employer requires you to like dry clean a uniform, they should be paying for that, right? If it's anything like beyond laundry, or if it's anything beyond like common stuff you would have in your closet, like common colors, then they should be paying for it. If it's like a distinctive design or color, you shouldn't be on the hook for providing those kind of things.
Like the hot dog hats and that kind of thing. Yeah, I just don't have that laying around.
Right.
Also, if they require like slip-resistant shoes,
Okay.
Then that's something the employer needs to pay for.
All right, we got news, traffic, and sports, then more conversation, essentials that you need to know as a California worker, know your rights, and know your opportunities. KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former President Trump is attending fundraisers on his day off from court today, slated to headline an event in Cincinnati with Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, who is rumored to be a contender for Trump's vice president. Tonight, Trump will be in Lexington to attend a fundraising dinner. Event flyers say dinner tickets cost between $25,000 and $845,000. Civil rights icon and pastor Reverend William Lawson is dead at the age of 95. Lawson, who is black, worked with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. during the civil rights movement, also helping to desegregate Houston, Texas in the 1960s. He founded Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church in 1962, serving as his pastor until 2004. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
At Progressive, they're making things even easier. They'll help you bundle your home and car insurance together so you can save money on both. Learn more at Progressive.com or call 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Again, that's Progressive.com or call 1-800-PROGRESSIVE.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Bronny James didn't talk to the media the entire season at USC, and he gave no interviews during his senior year at Sierra Canyon High School. LeBron's son had a lot to say Tuesday during a crowded media session at the NBA Scouting Combine in Chicago. First of all, he said he doesn't want people to just think of him as LeBron's son. Second, he said it's not his mindset to play with his father in the NBA. Bronny said his main focus is just to get to the league. Bronny's comments were clearly different from his father, who has a not-so-secret desire to play with his son in the NBA. Bronny is one of 78 players at the NBA Combine. He's trying to make a good enough impression to be selected in the NBA Draft on June 26. In his first 5-on-5 scrimmage Tuesday, Bronny made 2 of 8 shots to finish with 4 points and 4 rebounds in 19 minutes. The Combine continues through Sunday. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Sometimes I struggle to get to sleep. My body stopped for the day, but my mind is still running. So I take ZzzQuil.
ZzzQuil, the world's #1 sleep aid brand, has a range of non-habit-forming products to fit you and your family's needs. Invest in a great night's sleep for the best you tomorrow.
I'm awake and ready to take on anything.
Better days start with ZzzQuil nights. Explore our products at ZzzQuil.com. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
My friends swim no matter the season, but my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis can sometimes take me out of the moment. Now, thanks to Skyrizi and clear skin, count me in. With Skyrizi, risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. 3 out of 4 people achieve 90% clear skin at 4 months.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Ask your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist-prescribed biologic in psoriasis, and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKYRIZI to learn more.
Don't shave with that, son. You'll get razor bumps.
Nah, Pops. I'm good with Gillette's Skin Guard. How long you been growing that beard anyway? You know Mama hates it.
Yeah, had it since my last wet shave in 77. Got ingrown so bad, looked like I was growing a patch of new noses.
That's why I use the Gillette Skin Guard razor, face scrub, shave gel, and moisturize, so I don't have to worry about new razor bumps or shaving irritation.
Gillette Skin Guard, huh? Your mama's gonna love this one.
We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
Time flies when you're on the radio, and we do have a lot to talk about. California Labor Commissioner Lilia Garcia Brower, formerly on the board, by the way, of the LA Black Workers Center, is joining us in studio. And our friend Sherri Bell, who also works with the California Labor Commission and is a contributor here at KBLA, is with us now. California's got really great minimum wages, right? And they vary from city to city, but we have a statewide wage as well. Commissioner, you clarified that it's the higher wage that applies, right?
Yes, absolutely. So LA's wage is something like 18 and change, I believe.
It's gonna go up to $17.38 on July 1st.
$17.38
in the city of LA.
In the city of LA, right? But if you're in West Hollywood, it's higher than that.
Yes.
And so different little cities, but the state has a floor.
Yes.
I think the federal minimum wage is like $7.35 an hour. Obviously, that doesn't apply in California. So it's whether it's between state, county, city, it's whichever one is higher.
Absolutely. But also, if your employer hires you with the promise of paying you, let's say, $20 an hour, and then that's a verbal agreement that you can enforce if they in fact do not pay you. That's why it's so important to write down what are those terms that you're providing your labor under.
Okay. So and if you're a fast food worker now in California, it's $20 an hour. One of the things that I have been complaining about, those who listen to me every day know that, I feel like we as mainstream media, well, we're not in the mainstream, but many mainstream media outlets are saying, oh, well, these outlets have to charge you higher prices because the wages have gone up. Instead of saying, well, gas prices have gone up, so it costs more for all of the ingredients. Or inflation is hitting the fast food industry, it costs more for potatoes, so the French fries are going to be more. They're blaming the workers, and I hate that so much because why are we repeating that without evidence? You don't know why their prices went up. Maybe they're just price gouging you. That said, that $20 an hour, that only applies to fast food, right?
Absolutely. These are historic times in the fast food sector. So starting April 1 of this year, fast food employers that pertain to a national chain that have more than 60 establishments throughout the country that provide limited table service, they are subject to pay $20 an hour to their employees. I should say that the statute requires some exemptions. So there's about 10 exemptions. For example, if it is a fast food restaurant in the Staples Center, if it's in a large arena, if it's in a large hotel, there's a bakery exemption for locations that make their own dough and bake their bread bread in their facility and they sell it as a standalone item. So there's a lot of details.
Right.
Just to say that folks should call our information line to find out more. Get on our website at wagetheftisacrime.com to learn more about it. We have FAQs there. But in general, after April 1st of this year, fast food workers who work for a national chain with more than 60 locations that provide limited table service, they should be paid $20 an hour.
Period, full stop. I mean, and yeah, there's exemptions, but I'm reading here on KTLA 5 about this study actually coming out of the East Coast that's saying, from Rutgers University, that's saying that California minimum wage violations have doubled in cities like LA, and they're saying it's costing workers billions of dollars. They're losing up to $4,000 a year per worker in major metropolitan areas like LA and San Francisco because of minimum wage violations, meaning they're just not following the law.
Absolutely. Los Angeles County alone experiences more than $1 billion a year in wage theft. It's $26,000 that workers are robbed a week, according to a UCLA study. So that study's a little outdated. That number is probably higher, but we absolutely have a systemic problem with wage theft. And unfortunately, minimum wage and overtime are some of the most violated laws.
Okay, so there's it appears like, and correct me if I'm wrong because I haven't done a deep dive on this, but it looks like we're going to have a big initiative on the ballot in 2024 November again about this labor law that allows workers to sue class action lawsuits over violations in the workplace.
So I believe that's the Private Attorney General's Act.
Yeah.
I believe there is a proposition. We're not involved with it at this level. It's once a law is established, then that's a workplace protection that would be relevant to our agency. Then we get involved in understanding, enforcing that law,
right,
and
the existing law. Right.
Yeah.
But just something to note while we're thinking about this. I mean, because the federal data that they're citing in this Rutgers study is a 56% increase in minimum wage violations. That's affecting 1.5 million workers, and that California is specifically, having this wage theft. I guess because we have higher minimum wages. They're also saying mostly Black, Latino, and young workers are the ones that are getting wage theft. Does that track with what you
Absolutely. And one of the challenges, as you said at the opening of the show, we have some of the best protections in California. But if workers do not know them or know how to use them, then what's the value of that protection?
Yeah.
And that is exactly why we're here, and appreciate you giving us time to reach this important community. And that's why we have a youth advocate program. I was out in Moreno Valley in April. We trained 800 high school students. We have to make sure that these workers understand their rights so they can defend themselves at work.
Link says it's up to the employee to know what their rights are. Agreed, and that's, as you said, Commissioner, that's why we're having the conversation. And Aziz Bey says the most important thing is the contract with everything you do, but some people don't have contracts. Paul says, what about the trend towards working 4-day, 10-hour work weeks, the 410? Are there current laws within California that restricts this option for workers or employers?
What's important to know about an alternate work week, which is legal in California, but there's some rules employers have to follow. You need to have a secret ballot election, right? A worker needs to have the right to be able to change their mind on participating in an alternate work week. So if you get a job and the employer tells you this is the schedule, you're working 410s, without you going through that process, that can trigger a problem. So it's important to understand what are the employer's obligations. And even if the caller who said there's no contract sometimes, which is true, but workers should document what is the conditions the employer is offering you to work under. And there you have a verbal contract. You write down what they're promising you if you, in fact, perform labor for them, and we could hold them responsible to that.
Okay, that's good to know. Lars Taylor says, finally someone addressing security officer rights on the air. Security is one area we said where there's a lot of confusion. And as far as wage theft, this KTLA article also cites that there's a huge wage theft going on with nannies, child care workers, and home health care workers. Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yes.
A lot of people don't even report these payments, or maybe they don't even know that, there are these laws apply to your nanny and your babysitter.
That's absolutely right, Dominique. One of our biggest barriers is workers not understanding what their rights are, which is why we're here today. So it's so important for them to communicate with our office to understand what their rights are. And there's industry-specific rules, like we just went over the fast food industry, right? Home occupations also have separate rules that apply to them. So it's important for workers to understand what those are. In the home health care or in the personal attendant world, sometimes you're sleeping over at your employer's residence, right? And now that personal residence has become a workplace. So there's dynamics in there that you want to be aware of in order to be able to protect yourself.
Yeah. Important points. If you got a question, want to get in on this conversation about knowing our rights as workers, about what's available in California, I still got to hit you up to better understand the new laws around sick leave in the state of California. And I understand you might have some jobs open. We'll look at all that when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Your floors can go from clean to dirty fast. From juice spills, whoops, to muddy paw prints, to little sticky finger marks. Good thing your Swiffer WetJet works fast too. Swiffer WetJet easily cleans everyday messes as quick as they happen. The next mess is right around the corner. So grab your Swiffer WetJet and just spray, push, all clean.
Salutations, kinfolk and family. It's Slink Johnson. Los Angeles is known for some of the greatest tacos in the world, but none better than the Original Taco Pete. Visit them online at originaltacopete.com or check them out at 3272 Slauson Avenue near the corner of Slauson and Crenshaw, or 2251 Rosecrans Avenue, or you can always have Grubhub, DoorDash, or Uber Eats delivered. Original Taco Pete, home of the Black Taco. Black owned for over 35 years and 4 generations.
Did you know that feeling sluggish or weighed down could be a sign that your digestive system isn't working at its best? Taking Metamucil every day can help. Metamucil fiber powders help promote your daily digestive health using a plant-based fiber called psyllium. The gelling action of this special fiber traps and removes waste so you can feel lighter and more energetic. Metamucil, promoting digestive health for a better you. Learn more at metamucil.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go. Shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms, irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
Watch out!
You got me! The galaxy is safe once again.
In the pretend universe, kids play with pretend guns. In the real world, it's up to us to make sure they don't get their hands on a real gun. If you have a gun in the house, keep it locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Hey, what are you doing up on the step stool?
About to clean these light fixtures. The whole family's coming over. And if there's even a speck of dust in the house, my abuela will find it.
Here, I got a Swiffer duster to help with that.
A Swiffer what?
A Swiffer duster. It has this cool extendable handle that reaches 6 feet to get high and low, with fluffy dusters that easily trap and lock dust.
So, no more step stool?
No more step stool.
Easily trap and lock dust from hard-to-reach places with the Swiffer duster. Love it or your money back.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
All right. We're talking all things worker this morning, and I love that. California Labor Commissioner Lilia Garcia Brower is here, and our friend Sherri Bell, who is also part of the California Labor Commission, and her other hat is here. And I asked about the sick pay because you started out saying, Commissioner, that in California you're entitled to 40 hours of paid sick leave no matter where you work. Even no one has to tell you that. It doesn't have to be in a contract. There's no special offer. It's just your employers have to pay you 40 hours of paid sick time after what? After you've worked there a certain amount of time? Like, what are the rules around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Such an important topic, Dominique. Employer is obligated to have a poster up at work that explains to you the rules. But the rules are that you have to work for an employer for 90 days. And you have to work at least 30 days in the year for that employer, and then after 90 days of working for that employer, then you can access your paid sick leave. And the way they accrue, there's 2 ways. The employer could front load it, and when you start working, they put you an account with the 40 hours, and on your paycheck, it should come out how many hours you have available, and when you use them, that should also be an itemized line on your check stub. And then you can ask for any reason that it's for preventative care, to going to the doctor, to taking care of a family member. You don't need to provide a doctor's note to the employer in order to use these hours. The second way the employer can accrue them is for every hour you work, for every 30 hours of work, you get 1 paid sick leave hour. So then they go accruing over time. Those are the 2 ways. They either front load it or they accrue them based on the hours that you work.
But it's not some special category of job. It's everybody who meets the criteria you just laid out in the state of California is entitled to a full work week per year of sick pay.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm going to venture to guess that not everybody knows that. Let's circle back a little bit to documentation. I not surprisingly, you guys, Gemini words is what we do. I'm at some jobs I've been famous for writing memos because I just want to have, I want to have proof of what I said. Sometimes it's he said, she said. Usually when you're the person in front, you're the one on the microphone, folks want to say, that Dominique is evil. So, but what does that mean? Like, how do we document? I could probably write a book on this, but what's the best way to document? And when do we know we need to write something down?
Good questions. Yeah, for me, I would say this. From my experience, the best ways to document is a professionally written email. Asking your question via email.
No cuss words.
No cuss words. Also, a text message.
You can use a text.
You can use a text message, especially when it's like, how much am I making per hour, and you doing like a little odd job, and they try to be like, I didn't promise you this, and be like, well, you showed me this text, right? It's just like a, people call it a paper trail.
Right.
Or
but it could be a digital trail at this point too.
A digital trail, hugely important. When you're going through like a process, if you have to seek your wages that are owed to you, that you have documentation that you raised a concern or that you had a certain agreement about your compensation.
Right.
To have that in writing is golden.
Even if it's your writing, I think about some of these political cases I see, and they're always like, well, he has contemporaneous notes. What does that mean? Something happened to him and he wrote it down in a journal or a book or something. It sounds fancy, but it just means this happened to me today and it was bad. And the day and the time, right?
Right, absolutely. The first criminal case I worked on, Dominique, was for a security officer, and he wrote down his hours on a napkin. And he came to my office with that napkin when he was fired without pay. And that's all we had. And we started building his case. And the employer was actually criminally charged by the Los Angeles city attorney. This was probably like 2001 or so. So it's just so important, as Sherri said, yes, text messages, documenting it in a little notepad, a little audio recording in your phone, sending an email, taking a picture with something that has a date stamp on it or your time card. All of that will work. And your word and that of your colleagues or whoever around that facility where you worked.
It's interesting in a lot of the Me Too cases and stuff that have come up recently. One of the things we always hear about is, did they tell anyone about it? So it sounds like documentation plus go tell your best friend, go tell your pastor or somebody so that you can corroborate that you're not just making this up now.
Absolutely. So many of our communities were in the shadows. You're working at night, you're quietly just think you want to keep your head down and get your job done, when actually that works against us. When the legal system requires you to have evidence, you want to have all kinds of evidence, which means people saying, yes, I saw Sean show up here every day at 6:30 to report to work.
Right.
That person, doesn't matter what job they have, right? They could work for a different company, but if they would come testify that I saw him show up every day, that corroborates his story.
Or even if they said, oh yeah, she told me that she was worried about the asbestos at work, or that her boss was constantly sexually harassing her, or whatever it is, that there's another person you talk to seems to make it stronger. And I always thought emails were better than text, but now you're saying text messages, and I'm thinking about a certain trial in New York that's going on right now and how important those text messages are, and they seem to live forever. So that's just as good now?
Yes. What we're saying is document it any way possible.
Take a picture.
The other thing you could pull is get your phone log, and show that let's say you're supposed to be paid on Friday and your boss never showed up to pay you. And if you show your phone log, look, I called him 20 times. Why would a person be calling somebody that many times, right? That clearly corroborates that there was something they were expecting to happen that didn't happen.
Yeah, also about late pay. You speaking about not getting paid on your expected payday. There is like a law of Labor Code, I think 203 for waiting time penalty. So like if your employer has established pay dates for your job, if they pay you late, there's a penalty of $100 for paying you late. If it happens again, it's $200 plus a certain percentage of your payroll. The same thing if you resign. If you tell your employer in advance, hey, this is going to be my last day, and they're supposed to have your final check all your wages due. That means vacation payout, all the wages you do at the time of your resignation date. If they fire you, they're supposed to have all what you do on that day that they terminate you. If you quit not in advance, just like, you know what?
I'm out of here.
I'm out of here. You know that you're supposed to have that within 72 hours. And, you know, I mean, I'm just thinking about all that we're talking about. And I'm thinking about everybody has roles and responsibilities, right? We have responsibilities as an employee, roles and responsibilities. Employers have roles and responsibilities and expectations they should be following. So
this is good stuff to be continued. Commissioner Lilia Garcia Brower, give us the number and the website again for people who are listening and saying, I got questions.
Yes, please do call us with your questions at 833-526-4636. You could also visit our website, wagetheftisacrime.com.
Wagetheftisacrime.com should be easy to remember. And Sherri Bell and Commissioner Lilia Garcia Brower, thanks for coming in. Appreciate the conversation.
Thank you so
Dominique.
much.
It is time for the Tavis Smiley Show as usual, and we're running up against the clock right here. So I'm Dominique DiPrima. History is now, and we are making it together until tomorrow. One love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.